It began with silence, the kind of silence that speaks louder than any statement. When Jamie Dornan appeared alone at a recent London premiere, his wedding ring was missing. The cameras flashed, questions poured in, but Jamie's expression said it all: calm on the outside, chaos within. For years, he and Amelia Warner had been the definition of quiet love in a noisy world. But now, that love seemed to be slipping away, one public appearance at a time. Their story wasn't born from red carpets or spotlight moments. It started quietly, beautifully, almost like a song only the two of them could hear. Jamie, then a rising actor struggling to break through, met Amelia, a woman with a soft smile and a strength that matched his storms. She wasn't chasing fame. She found beauty in the simple things: home, family, and love that didn't need to be broadcasted to the world. For years, they lived in harmony. Away from gossip columns and flashing bulbs, they built a small universe filled with laughter and warmth. When Jamie's career began to rise, Amelia stood by him, shielding their private world from Hollywood's chaos. She was proud but cautious. She knew the cost of fame, and how quickly it could erode even the strongest bonds. Then came 50 Shades of Grey. Overnight, Jamie became one of the most talked about men on the planet. The intensity of the role, the fame, the rumors, it all came crashing into their once protected world. Suddenly, tabloids were filled with speculation about his chemistry with Dakota Johnson, whispers of secret feelings, of blurred lines between fiction and reality. Amelia tried to ignore it. She trusted him, or at least she wanted to. But the more the spotlight followed Jamie, the less she recognized the man who once loved quiet Sunday mornings and handwritten notes. The demands of fame began to pull them apart. He was always traveling, always filming, always on. She, meanwhile, was left to raise their children and hold together the fragile pieces of home. Friends close to the couple began to notice changes, small at first, but unmistakable. Jamie grew distant, withdrawn. Amelia smiled less. Public appearances became rare, and when they did happen, something in their body language had shifted. The warmth was gone, replaced by polite smiles and invisible walls. Hollywood can be cruel to those who love deeply. The more Jamie tried to balance it all, career, family, expectations, the more he seemed to lose himself. He gave his best performances on screen, but off it, he struggled to play the role of the perfect husband. There was a night, one friend later recalled, when Amelia stood by the window of their home, watching the city lights fade into dawn. Jamie had just returned from another long shoot, exhausted, detached. They barely spoke. When he left the next morning, suitcase in hand, she didn't ask where he was going. Maybe she already knew. The truth is, love doesn't always end with a fight or betrayal. Sometimes, it just fades under the weight of unspoken pain. Amelia once said in an interview, "Love should feel like peace." But peace was the one thing they had lost. As weeks turned into months, Jamie began appearing alone more often. There was no statement, no confirmation, just absence. And in that absence, fans started to piece together what the couple refused to admit: their marriage had quietly reached its breaking point. Behind closed doors, they tried to save what was left. Counseling, long talks, moments of honesty that hurt more than silence ever could. But once trust begins to crack, even the kindest hearts can't always mend it. Jamie's eyes told a story he couldn't speak. In interviews, when asked about his family, he would smile, but the smile never reached his eyes. Fame had given him everything he thought he wanted, but it took the one thing he needed most. And then, one morning, it was done. A moving truck outside their home. A quiet goodbye, no drama, no public statement, just the final act of a love story that once felt unbreakable. Some fans still believe they'll find their way back to each other. But those who have loved and lost know better. Sometimes, love doesn't die with anger. It simply runs out of strength. Jamie Dornan walked away from the home he built with Amelia Warner, carrying not just a suitcase, but years of shared dreams, laughter, and what-ifs. And as he disappeared into the grey London fog, one question lingered in every heart that had followed their story. How does a man who once had everything, love, fame, and family. Learn to live when he loses the one thing he can't replace. When the news finally broke, it wasn't through a press release or a paparazzi photo. It came from the silence between them. Jamie Dornan and Amelia Warner officially divorced, the headlines read. No drama, no statements, just a confirmation of what many already sensed. Still, the weight of those words hit harder than anyone expected. For a couple who had mastered the art of privacy, this was the first time their love story was out of their control. Hollywood reacted instantly. Friends, fans, and reporters rushed to piece together the story behind the breakup. Was it fame, distance, or something deeper? Something neither of them ever dared to admit out loud? Those close to Jamie said he was heartbroken but relieved, as though he had been holding his breath for years. Others described Amelia as graceful yet distant, choosing to stay silent rather than add noise to the chaos. In truth, the real reason was not one thing, it was everything. Love rarely collapses overnight. It crumbles slowly, piece by piece, under the pressure of time and misunderstanding. Fame had given Jamie everything he once dreamed of, but it also built invisible walls between him and the woman who once understood him better than anyone. People often forget that Amelia was an artist too. A musician with her own sensitivity and world of emotions. While Jamie was flying from set to set, living in different time zones, she was at home composing songs, raising their children, and wondering when he'd come back as the man she once knew. At some point, the music stopped. Those close to them say the breaking point came quietly. There was no fight, no scandal, no final straw, just a moment of realization. One night, after another long day of pretending everything was fine, Amelia told him, "We're not the same people anymore, are we?" He didn't answer. He couldn't, because deep down, he knew she was right. The love that had once felt effortless now felt like something they had to survive. Jamie had been chasing the version of himself the world demanded, while Amelia was still holding on to the man he used to be, gentle, grounded, human. Fame had changed his orbit, and no matter how much he tried to come back, gravity had already shifted. After the divorce, Jamie withdrew from public life for a while. No grand interviews, no social media posts. Just quiet. He spent time with their children, showing the world that even though the marriage had ended, his role as a father was stronger than ever. That was his anchor, his one unshakable truth. But there were moments, rare and fleeting, when the cracks showed. During a late-night talk show appearance, when asked how he was doing, he smiled softly and said, "You learn that some goodbyes are permanent, but they don't have to be bitter." The audience applauded, unaware of how much weight those words carried. Behind that calm exterior was a man still trying to understand how love could disappear so quietly. In his private circle, Jamie admitted that the hardest part wasn't losing Amelia, it was realizing how much he had taken her steadiness for granted. The career, the fame, the recognition, none of it mattered in the empty moments between flights and film sets. And Amelia? She never spoke publicly about the split. Her silence became her statement. Instead, she poured her emotions into her music. One of her recent songs, with lyrics about letting go, "When Love Becomes a Ghost," was quietly interpreted by fans as her final message to Jamie. In time, both began to heal, separately but respectfully. There was no public blame, no bitterness. Just acceptance. Sometimes, love doesn't fail because of betrayal. It fails because two people grow in different directions, and no one notices until it's too late. Still, those who know Jamie well say the experience changed him profoundly. He became softer, more introspective. In later interviews, when asked about love, he didn't use grand words. He just said, "It's the hardest thing to keep, but the most beautiful thing to lose." That was the truth. The real reason behind the divorce wasn't fame or another person. It was the quiet distance that forms when two hearts forget how to meet in the middle. Now, when Jamie steps onto a set or walks a red carpet, there's a calm in him, a kind of peace that only comes after surviving heartbreak. He still carries Amelia with him in the small things. The way he talks about family, the way he pauses before answering questions about love, the way he looks when a certain song plays. Some memories never leave, they just learn to live in silence. In the end, their story wasn't about failure. It was about the courage to let go with grace. Because sometimes, the truest form of love isn't holding on, it's knowing when to set someone free. As the world moves on, one thing remains clear. Jamie Dornan didn't lose love. He lived it fully, deeply, painfully, and in doing so, reminded everyone that even the most perfect love stories can end without villains, only humans trying to do their best. And maybe, that's what makes it so heartbreakingly real.